So for most of our clients, it's a huge relief when we tell them, you are not an addict, you're no more an addict than you are a recovering thumbsucker, or a recovering bedwetter. That's a thing that you did at the time to help yourself feel better, eliminate stress, calm the body, calm the emotions. And then you learned better and you stopped, and you don't ever have to struggle with not sucking your thumb anymore. And it's like a light bulb comes on and suddenly there's hope again, because they realize, oh my gosh, that's right. I mean, the addiction was the solution to a problem, and it wasn't a problem until it caused other problems in their lives. And I think that's a huge relief to people. They're finally able to sort of hear, maybe for the first time, that's not me, and there is a possibility of something else.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Might Help, Can't Hurt. Conversations with leaders, doers, and friends. And my leaders, doers, and friends this time around are Reed and Krista Smith. They're the founders of Centered Recovery.
Yeah.
I have known you guys. I was trying to do this. I always try and do this at the beginning and remember. And I remember coming down to teach with you, and I remember a few other meetings. But when did we first meet? Was there a moment? Did we have a moment?
I think we did at the conference in Minnesota in 2014, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's where we were formally introduced, but we were familiar with your work prior to that.
Right. We didn't ride the roller coaster together, so that's why I don't remember it. They actually have a roller coaster in a mall. It's the coolest thing.
We rode it. We did.
Yeah.
No, you guys run, and I haven't been to your new center, but the way that you approach recovery is so radically different from certainly the 12-step programs, the other programs that I've come across. It's a very general question, but it probably will get us somewhere. Were you already interested in recovery and you found an approach, or did you have an approach and thought, oh, this would be great in recovery?
Yeah. Well, I got into the behavioral health field in 2008. So it was prior to being introduced to the principles and so it wasn't until I was, working in the field that I was introduced to that, and then saw how what was providing sustainable change for people was having insights. And then how do we universally point people to that rather than just conceptual knowledge?
And when you got into the field, was your experience, because I've talked to a lot of people who got in with great intentions and slowly felt their level of enthusiasm drop as they saw what they were up against. Did you have a sort of a similar journey? Like, this is going to be, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. And then, what was the shape?
Yeah, it was really perplexing, right? Because all of these folks, they come to the same facility, eat the same food, have the same programming, and then have different outcomes. So I was just really confused as to how one person finds success and one person doesn't. And it wasn't until I had my own insight into how I worked that I saw the reason people were finding their health and remaining healthy. And so that kind of started the journey for us.
Mm-hmm. And it really was sort of the catalyst for what would later become, the program that we have now, because he was like, well, even in the 12 steps, they're all pointing to that sort of insight moment, whatever, where you really see clearly for yourself what you were doing, who you are, what you want in terms of health. And if that's the common, sort of catalyst for actual real change, we were just like, well, there has to be, we know that there's another way than just this prescriptive, what other people are doing, because that works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. So what's the essence of that, and can we get to that? And yeah, so that's what we've been working on. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I've always found interesting about the 12 steps, which I didn't know for 20 years of working with people who'd been through 12-step programs and things like that, is that they're actually written as a description, not a prescription. They're actually written as, we did this, and then we did that, and then this happened, and then we did this. And to me, that's always been sort of fascinating, because it's as you say, it's like you can describe what happens, but there's this bit in the middle, right? You know, the insight moment, where if that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter about all the bits before.
Right, right. So Bill W. didn't go through the 12 steps. He had his insight, his epiphany, and then he tried to, you know, sort of work backwards and say, well, what might lead people to that, to where I was? And so I think that gets lost in translation sometimes, where people think, oh, I have to be successful at steps 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we're not anti-12 step in any way. In fact, you know, there's a percentage of our population who also does the 12 steps, but we just knew that for the people that it didn't work for, you know, the language or the, you know, the form or whatever it was, we wanted to offer something different. And we knew that if the actual essence, the good stuff of the 12 steps is that insight, well, we can help point people in other ways. So
I kind of want to look at it both from the point of view of, you know, if somebody is dealing with addiction, but also for the general public. So if we can start an addiction and then kind of broaden it out, what have you learned about? And it feels weird and probably wrong to say that population, as if, oh, those people. But what have you learned about addiction, and what have you learned, you know, specifically, like why? Why does it happen?
Yeah, and there's really not a black and white answer to that. You know, there's tons of folks that I meet, young athletes that have legitimate sports injuries, that are innocently prescribed pain medication and find themselves physically dependent. And they might not have what people consider a mind of an addict, but they got a physical dependency on this particular substance. And so often, you know, it's very innocent. And there's so many things that we can do and just drop. Like, you can play a sport and enjoy it and then just not play it for a while. But when it comes to mind altering substances, they're more sticky than that. But ultimately, I think that it's you know, for what we generally bell curve imagine to be people addicted would be people that have find themselves in some type of conflict, psychological conflict, and they're looking for a means to end it. And they cleverly discover, I can hack this biology really quickly and just hit the snooze of what my mind is producing in my body.
So somebody shows up day one. You know, my guess is that when they show up, they're usually not at their best. That would probably often be the trigger for them being there. How do you introduce them to a perspective? Because when I've met people who are coming out of addiction or addiction recovery, you know, their identity is very much, I am an addict. So help me cope with my nature is the way that I have experienced it. So how do you ease them from that starting point to, I have innate health? That sounds like a big jump.
So I think a lot of people do feel like an identification with this I am an addict thing, partly because that's what society tells them, you know, both an innocent label to sort of, you know, make sense of why you would do some of the crazy things that you've done or hurt people in the way that you have. But also really just from a misunderstanding. So for most of our clients, it's a huge relief when we tell them, you are not an addict, you know. You're no more an addict than you are a recovering thumbsucker, you know, or a recovering bedwetter. That's a thing that you did at the time to help yourself feel better, eliminate stress, calm the body, calm the emotions. And then you learned better and you stopped, and you don't ever have to struggle with not sucking your thumb anymore. And it's like a light bulb comes on and suddenly there's hope again, because they realize, oh my gosh, that's right. I mean, the addiction was the solution to a problem, and it wasn't a problem until it caused other problems in their lives. And I think that's a huge relief to people. They're finally able to sort of hear, maybe for the first time, that's not me, and there is a possibility of something else. And so we do have, I think, a specific population. We know that our program isn't necessarily for everyone, because, if you very much identify with an addiction, or, who you are, then maybe you're not ready to let that go yet, and that's okay. But for our clients, they are, they're ecstatic to hear that they're not broken, and that, we can walk you through this. And then that there is total hope of not just being in recovery for the rest of your life, but being recovered.
And can you tell with any degree, for whether or not you say you are going to be okay? Yeah, I'm worried about you. Like, can you tell in yourselves, yeah, this person's going to come out fine, and this one, we're not there?
You hate to say that you can, but you definitely have a sense, right?
Yeah.
But I think realizing, that saying, when the teachers or the student's ready, the teacher appears. I really believe that is true. So it's our responsibility as an organization to ready the student so the teacher can present themselves. And they just don't imagine that the teacher is going to be themselves.
Right.
So they got to.
So that the follow-on question has to be, how can you tell? Like what and I'm not, obviously, we're not going to go down a line. I'm not going to hold up mugshots and go, yes, no, but if you can tell, there's got to be something that you're picking up on.
Well, and it's not even maybe does this person permanently abstain from drugs or alcohol, as it is, has this person seen something within themselves that's changed how they see the world? And because nobody's perfect, there's plenty of people that have insights and then have momentary lapses of unhealthy conditioned thinking that finds expression in their lives. However, our folks don't view it as failure. They see it as that happened, and they remain with it, dealing with the fact of what's going on rather than the interpretation of the fact, which they probably did in the past.
Right. Now, I know, Reed, and I'll ask you to share it in a moment, that you kind of had. You mentioned like an epiphany moment where you saw it. And then, Krista, one of the reasons we're talking today is because you wrote me about how you didn't. You kind of were being dragged along for a little while behind. Do you guys mind sharing your stories? Because I think to me, they represent the two things I've seen, where people do have the kind of road to Damascus moment, and then other people go, what the hell happened on the road to Damascus?
Yeah.
So speaking on behalf of Damascus, Reed.
Yeah. Well, so working at a treatment center and, reading and attempting to do what I thought was self-improvement, I had the epiphany that there wasn't a self that existed to improve, and that it was all produced by this activity of thinking. And it freed me from the unhealthiness of the character that I pretended to be.
Sorry, I'm watching my dogs behind me while this is going on. In the spirit of mass professionalism that I'm exhibiting here, I'm going to let them out.
That's fine.
Oh, there's a famous story about when live TV started, and they started kind of putting dramas on live TV, and actors weren't used to anyone noticing what happened when they weren't saying their lines. There was some famous stage actor who did Hamlet, and as he was being carried off, opened his eyes right up into the camera, supposedly dead, and just going, "Oh, this is live." So it's happened worse.
But yeah, not quite that dramatic. Just
not quite that dramatic. But so okay, so you now I get in a transcript. I realized there wasn't a self is a bit of a mic drop. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah. Like I had, always had plenty of what I thought were friends, and had a lot of people that surrounded me. And I had always, we just never assume that we don't know who we are. We're living from this thought created entity that doesn't ever question its own existence. And I felt like I was a guy that was a people pleaser, and that was almost like a merit badge that I had earned and wore proudly. And my insight was into seeing that if I feel that I can please and make happy another human being, then implicitly I look to you, the world, and other people to make me happy. And knowing that my happiness didn't come from the world or other people, I was free from the need to pretend for anyone. I could just show up and let being express itself through me, rather than constantly try to be an image for another person. And there was just so much freedom and lightness that came along with it, that it was just right for me.
So Chris, when he realized he no longer needed to please other people, did he become a bit of a jerk, or what? Like, how was that from your side? I married a people pleaser. Why did you stop?
Why aren't you pleasing me? Yeah, what's happening? It was I wouldn't say he was a jerk, but it was definitely disconcerting. I mean, I felt like I knew him pretty well, or at least the person that he showed me, or I interpreted. And he was totally different all of a sudden. And but when he says that there was a lightness and a freedom, I mean, he was like a little kid, and that just things didn't faze him. He was very, I would say, resilient in just about every way possible. And it was not only disconcerting, but it was a little threatening, because I was like, what do you mean you're not upset? Like, why aren't you frustrated right now? Or, and I remember specifically trying to like poke him some, like, you're supposed to fight back right now. And so, yeah, it was a radical shift. And I won't say he was a jerk before, but there was definitely like a self-centered, aspect that just seemed to evaporate. And it's the reason that I became curious about what he was doing, because he was so different. He was so just like stable and calm and relaxed. And I don't think it made him a jerk. I think it actually made him better at handling everything that happened. We had very young kids at that point, and a baby that wasn't sleeping through the night, and just everything that comes along with having 3 small kids. And he was just, it seemed effortless for him. And I was definitely frustrated because it was not effortless for me yet,
Right. So then tell us, speaking on behalf of Nothing Happened on the Road to Damascus, Krista, what was your journey then from there?
So while he had definitely had this radical shift, he really didn't have the language to talk about it yet, or to help me understand, because obviously I didn't see, a light didn't come on when I read the same words that he had read, and that kind of thing. And so he, did the proselytizing thing. Like, I'm going to I'm going to continue to find preachers for you. And it was a lot of gurus and TED Talks and speakers and, read this passage. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything. That's not helpful. And my complaint continued. I was so busy and mentally and, in actuality, very busy, that I was like, give me the key points, distill that down and tell me what it is so we can keep going. And just all the people were very slow and, just have this beautiful way of speaking, which I now appreciate. But back then I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm trying to do dishes and laundry and kids are crying and I can't be quiet with this person right now. And so he would show me people and I'd say, I'm done, like enough. I'd stop. And then I would say, all right, try again, and he's like, okay. And, different authors and different speakers. And it wasn't until he played that video of yours and you literally started out the talk about, someone had showed you some speakers and you were like, I don't know, they all talk really slow. And I was like, see, exactly. I'm not crazy. This is hard. And it made me laugh enough that I relaxed and just watched. And then you said probably the same thing that he had been saying for the past 6 months. But it just clicked. And I remember I laughed so much. And I was like, this is so simple. Why didn't you just say it that way? Pretty sure I did, But yeah, and I definitely didn't have that religious experience, but on a practical level, it made so much sense. And I think that's honestly, a really good reason or a example of how we work so well together, because his understanding, his grounding, his even interest is very philosophical, spiritual, this whole beautiful enlightenment thing. And then mine is from a very practical standpoint. I know the neuropsychology of why it works. I know what's happening in your brain when you're making forming a habit.
Yeah. So actually, let me take advantage of that interruption. They did that on my behalf. What would you say it is that you saw that was so simple?
I mean, for lack of a better term, that it is coming from thought, that nothing that I'm feeling, experiencing, even understanding about the world around me isn't coming through my own filter of thinking. And it changed the world. So I literally have a painting. It's Magritte, that this is not a pipe.
Oh yeah.
And I had always been tickled by that. I thought that was just the funniest thing. And then it was just like, oh my gosh, that's not a pipe. Like, none of this is. And for that to hit in a different way, where it's not just funny, but it's like, oh yeah, that's me. There's me again. It suddenly, I like to tell people that it didn't eliminate the me, but it put a tiny bit of space between me and the things that I was experiencing. And in that space was possibility of seeing it a different way, of having a different experience. And before, it was very close and there was no room. And yeah, and having that room with my kids and with my relationship and with work even was just, it was life-changing. And the more I experienced, the more I wanted to experience. And so it just grew and grew. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess that then would be the follow-on is how has it deepened for you guys? Since those initial kind of like, oh, why didn't you just say so moments?
Right.
I think that, being so fortunate to be able to kind of bleed this, whether we're at home communicating with our family, because our children are very grounded in this understanding, or at work, anytime we're sharing in group and we're having a dialogue, you know, we just see more and more, because our clients are seeing more and more, and they're coming up with these incredible personal metaphors that just really help us. We're all in this group and we're all thinking together. We're thinking together, and it's like we're all taking our flashlights and kind of putting them in phase, and they become very powerful, and we're looking, and it helps me see further and further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think originally I really just thought, okay, this helps me not get caught up in drama, you know, like personal drama. Okay, sure, this helps me not feel so worn out by, you know, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. You know, this helps me see my mental limits, you know, and then it expanded to my work as a photographer, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, suddenly, rather than following a formula that I knew had, you know, kind of sold, you know, that people came to me for, you know, this shot plus this shot plus this shot, I was really just listening to them and what they wanted, and suddenly seeing, oh, it's really important that, you know, they play together. So they would probably like playful shots, and, you know, and then, so my photography business even changed completely, because I had a successful photography business because I was sort of known for these key shots, and I was technically good. But as soon as I started actually being there with my clients and listening to them, they were far surpassing anything I had ever done, because they were like, this is amazing. And how did you know that, you know, she loves when he picks her up like that? And, you know, my mother always does this sweet hug, and you caught that, and we didn't even have that on our list. And I was like, whoa, you know, just actually being there with them allowed them to show through, and less of me. And then friends, and then, you know, loved ones, and it just expanded, and it didn't even feel like it took effort on my part if I just sat back and let other people be who they were.
Yeah.
It was less work for me, and I was enjoying them more, which was crazy, you know, because previously I think we both felt like we had to really work at relationships, including ours, you know, like I have to be there for you, and you prefer X, Y, and Z. And when we stopped with our, what do you call it? Sort of our preconceptions about each other, and we were just there, it became effortless. There's no work. And it was so much better than we even thought it could be, which is crazy. And then our work here is the same. Yeah.
So I guess, I mean, my daughter used to play a game with me called the unfair game, which meant that she could change the rules at any point so that she could win. And I feel a little bit like I'm about to play the unfair game with you, but hey, you came on the show. So if somebody was sitting down in front of you and they had like 10 minutes max, and they were like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not an addict, so I don't qualify for the program. But man, you're onto something. Can you give me the best you got in 10 minutes?
Yes.
And go.
Yeah. Well, I think that if we look at our psychological hurt, what we would refer to as suffering, which is why people come to us, right? We're not medical doctors treating chronic pain or physical pain, but a lot of people that do have chronic, pain, if we can help them understand the narrative that superimposes itself on top of that, then they can deal with the pain as a fact directly, which is, it may be uncomfortable, but it's a lot less of a suffering producer when the story isn't constantly laying on top of it. So if the narrative in the absence of the narrative, we experience this lightness of being. Then we need to understand ourselves beyond our story, our narrative, our linear me in time as an object. And so it's helpful to understand, just like as a human being, to begin at, I'm not saying we're going to start at birth, but like little children don't do anything to be able to have their senses operate. And potty training, you know, we became potty trained not by our parents allowing us to sit on a toilet, but by having the insight that the sensation in this body of the bladder being full is a message. And when you decode that message accurately, boom, you're potty trained. And you're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to have accidents. Same with the gag reflex. Our middle son, the first time he ever, got nauseous, he didn't know what nauseous was. And he felt possessed when it unfolded. And we're like, that's what nauseous is. When you feel that in the future, you go to the restroom. And so it just takes once. And he's like, I got it. I know what's up. And so helping people really see the intelligence of the body and how all of these senses are acting in a way that they notify us when the ability to sense itself is in danger. Like I listen to music, and when we listen to music at a higher volume, it overtakes all the other sensors' bandwidth, and we're totally absent of thinking and in the music. But at some point, if the volume gets high enough, then we don't enjoy it because it's a threat to our ability to hear. So all of the senses have this built-in intelligence and feedback loops. And if we just see that thinking is happening and that there's not a separate thinker in me, in fact, the ears are what are doing the hearing of the facts. But the interpretation is that analytical inward movement, which we imagine ourselves to be. So helping people go through the body in a way where we just go through each sense and how it's communicating, and then just see our failure to make the connection that we also can sense and perceive the entire movement of thought and all of its content. And get a feel for the quality of how it's functioning and whether it's in alignment or in accord with the health of this organism or not. And so as we do this in a very sane, rational, logical way, you can't help but if you're open to learning and not seeing your conclusions and expectations, which prevent you from observing, then you naturally learn. And you just begin to see more and more. And then suddenly that fact of what is seen, that direct perception, it speaks for itself. It informs everything. And so you begin to really deal with the facts rather than this interpretation. And you see when this analytical movement in the mind appears that's what it is. It's an interpretation. It's not the fact. And then there's so much space because it's like, holy cow, the thoughts that are rising in me do not make me. They don't belong to me. They appear in me. And then you can hear other people's thoughts as if they're your own, and you get into their mind because their language expresses their mind for you.
So what's the connection? And I can kind of make one, but what's the connection then between the physical senses and learning what the signals mean and that?
Yeah. Well, when we have a bright light in our eyes, we close our eyes. We don't look more into it. And so when thought, which is a material process in the brain, it's like the ocean waves. Thoughts are just happening in the brain, and thoughts arise from perception. So as we smell something, if I smell my coffee, then I think about coffee. If I see a coworker open the door and have that perception of that coworker, then their name appears as well as, what it might be about. So to really see how the body is, the mind is conceiving these perceptions, it isn't too far of a leap to borrow some of that logic and see that, okay, if breathing is happening and I don't feel like I'm responsible for being the breather, and I don't need to be, that's a beautiful thing. I only need to know when I can't, right? And it's impossible not to. And it's the same with thought. Thinking is just happening. We're not here to stop it, change it, manipulate it, manage it, or anything. We're just seeing the fact that, okay, thinking is happening. I don't need to be aware of all of the thinking that is appearing in me. I just need to be aware of the unhealthy ones. And I can't not be aware of that. It's impossible to ignore it because the body is this incredible speaker that's playing the music of our own thinking, just moment to moment. And when I ride in the car and a crappy song comes on, I never beat up or smash my speakers. If my favorite football team is losing on the TV, I don't bang and
You
smash
don't?
my TV.
I do, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, the problem isn't in the TV. The problem isn't in the speaker. The speaker is playing the information, the TV's providing the information, but that interpretation is all up here. And so to see that my body is this incredible high fidelity display, and there's nothing wrong with it. And that the error has been, I haven't connected, or I've ignored, not known that the mind has produced this wave of sensations that are being felt in the body. And because of that, I treat them as if they're independent. And my means by solving these independent things is just more thinking. And that's like looking into the light when you're blinded.
So that's, and I'm just trying to follow it through the kind of, because you're presenting it as a logical kind of sequence. That, so if I can learn, oh, this sensation in my body means go sit on the potty.
Yeah.
Right? This sensation means, please don't throw up on the nice rug. This, I can learn what they mean and what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? Is there a manual? Like, if you feel this, that means you're thinking that? Like, what's the map across?
Yeah, well, no, because I think a lot of what we refer to as emotions are similar physiological expressions, similar chemistry firing off. It's just the narrative that's appearing in that particular moment that assigns what it is. But, the little child, when they experience upsetness, the reason that it goes is because they don't have the word upsetness. They can't live from an image of the body. They're connected. They're living from a direct experience of it. And so to really see, are we dealing with where the hurt is, which we're saying is in the body, or are we dealing with the narrative that produced it? Are we trying to change the narrative, or are we able to really be honest and brave enough to go to the direct sensations of the body and pay attention to it because it's felt? We don't have to think about it to feel it.
So and I understand, and later you can give me crap about that I'm the one asking you these kinds of annoying questions when I'm the one who usually gets these kinds of annoying questions. But is the solution then to feel it?
To feel it without a feeler. Yeah. The entity that interprets the sensations and says, this is why it's here. And this is not being with a feeling. When we guide our clients to remain with the body and be with the body, it's the same as taking your pulse. You don't have to think to find your pulse. In fact, thinking may put noise in between it and make it more difficult. You don't have to, you just pay attention. You direct your attention there. In the same way, if you're hearing a strange noise that's arising over a background, you may just kind of gently just direct attention to the act of hearing itself, not with, I want to hear a particular thing, but just be sensitive to the hearing. And so when we guide our clients to go to the body, it's going directly to the body, the sensations that are tangibly felt, and not thinking about the body. So we're not using the mind to interpret, to resist, to assist, nothing. We're just remaining with the raw sensations. And in doing that, a perception takes place because the body has moved out of the background into the foreground. So it's like we can't catch our breath. And then we would pay attention to why we aren't able to catch our breath. This is the same type of intelligent notification, but just inwardly. And so when the perception takes place of these sensations, thought rises from this new perception, and it will be one that isn't involved in producing it.
So one of the things just from, college years or whatever is that, your mental bandwidth is there's no real multitasking. You can only really pay attention to 1.5 things at a time. And that half is even, not simultaneous. You're just kind of switching back and forth. And so you can walk and chew gum, but you're not like focused on every sensation of the gum and every sensation of walking. It's like gum, walk, right? And so what most people do when they are experiencing what they consider upset is they're really just listening to that thinking mind, that's saying you were hurt and you have a right to be hurt. And here's all the reasons that you are hurt and should remain hurt and, get angry. And so when we're so used to that sort of inner monologue that we treat that as our expert. And so that always gets first place, just like if you're thinking while I'm talking, even if you think you're paying attention to me, you're really giving more attention to you because you're more important, and that's fine. So what we're kind of walking through as an exercise with people is that if you put the attention to where you're physically feeling things, your actual awareness, this has no choice but to kind of take that second back seat, and it's no longer the driver. And in that space of awareness of what's actually being felt, and okay, this, it feels a little tight, or there's tense sensations or whatever. It allows the thinking to just flow enough that you're now back to dealing with reality of what is, instead of what that thinking mind was producing, which is kind of what he was talking about. You don't stare into the blinding light, because that doesn't make any sense. There's a blinding light. I close my eyes, and if I need to investigate it, I walk around and see, what's happening on the other side. I don't continue to stare right into that light. So giving people that opportunity to just go, okay, and allow the thought that was producing all of that to begin with to just relax. In that space is that new possibility. And that's huge for so many people. They're not used to just being with themselves. They're used to thinking, to reading that constant ticker tape. That's one of the ways we describe it is, I don't know if you remember around 9/11 when suddenly, the news had ticker tape across the bottom, breaking news, threat level, crazy, whatever it was. Because there was
it was threat level crazy.
Yeah. There was so much information that they thought that, just the regular news is not enough. We also have to run this ticker tape, because you need to know all of this right now. Well, we kind of have our own ticker tape, and it's always moving. And, sometimes it's really important information, like don't walk in front of the car. And other times it's not important information, like, what the Kardashians had for breakfast today or whatever. And that's fine. But when it becomes that threat level crazy in your mind, suddenly all of the news is slanted, and it's all, coming from that perspective of, threat level elevated. And so it becomes less trustworthy because now it's biased. And so we teach even on a physiological level that, acting as if threat level crazy is your threshold, you're bound to make choices that are not necessarily healthy for you. And if you're able to slow down, let that ticker tape play on, it moves through, new news will show up. And you don't necessarily have to do anything about it. And so that's a relief. I know it's a relief for me.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely image because you theoretically tuned in for what's on the screen, not the ticker tape.
Yeah.
But the ticker tape grabs your eye because it's made to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, my last question for you guys, and this is my official last question that I do. I'm going to make each of you emperor, well, empress, if you prefer, for a bit. What would you decree for the planet? What would your first big move as emperor or empress be?
Yeah. I think that the capacity to question is a powerful function. I don't know what you call it. And we tend to just project our questions outward and to really begin to call the police on ourselves and say, you know, begin to question how we work. Because thought will tell us our problems, it projects our problems to places. In fact, I met with a guy this morning and he goes, I know the problems inside me. And I'm like, yeah, once again, though, it's got a location and it's not you, right? It's like always, oh, if I just did this. And so thought can't tell us where our problems are when it comes to this thought created self, because it's made of thought. It's not like a chair. And so to be curious enough to question, is the error been made in the thinking process itself and not what it produces? And if we can change it at that level, then what it produces begins to be orderly, it's coherent, it has beauty, it's harmonious, it aligns with the health of this body. And then you begin to have this common sense show up that says, when this thing begins to be energetic, I'm going to use this thing to tell me what this thing up here is doing. Whereas I think my experience before understanding any of this was using this thing up here to tell me what was going on in here.
So it would in a way be decreeing, question everything, look to before thought, as opposed to I mean, or the other simple way that I could say what you said, because I've got to act out your decree. That's the downside to being.
No, go for it.
Right. So I've got to actually make the people do this. So it's let the body tell you about the mind, not the mind tell you about the body.
Yeah, the body's far older than this prefrontal cortex that's capable of creating images. We were not ready for these images to be produced because we haven't seen that the images produced are not the reality.
Right.
They're just our personal reality. And it's causing tremendous conflict within the individual and as a society. So, yeah, to look into the conflict is what ends it, because to try to escape the conflict only perpetuates it and makes it keep going.
Empress, what you got for us?
So on the fly, Empress probably would decree something along a similar line, but that's to really, I think, challenge your conceptions about things. Because one of the things that I hear most often, you know, from friends and family is just, you know, oh, marriage is hard work, or, you know, recovery is hard work. You know, dealing with COVID is stressful, you know, and when you set up that preconceived idea of something being hard or difficult or stressful or insurmountable, then it definitely will be. And it's almost oversimplified to say that, you know, but it's totally true that when you set up a mental roadblock for something, your mind will work to make it that way. And so, yeah, I think challenging your preconceptions about anything that you have in your life is a huge sort of mental hack, I guess, you know, almost gift to yourself, because if you actually want to do it and you even catch yourself, I catch myself sometimes like, oh, I have 12 things to do today. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be tough. And then I go, yeah, okay, sure, you know.
Put this into the form of a formal decree. It sounds a bit like the old bumper sticker. Don't believe everything you think.
There you go. Bumper sticker it up. I like it. Yeah.
So, Reed, Krista, we're going to put links, but where's the best place for people to find out more about you and what you guys are doing?
Sure. So centeredrecovery.com is our main website. We are on Facebook as well. It will be streamed on Facebook. One of the things that I think we're most excited about that we have sort of had in the works for a while is that we have people from all over the country who want to participate in our program, and not even from an addiction standpoint, but just from a, anxiety, depression, burnout. We have many executives who are just like, I have to get this burnout under control. I'm going to lose my job. My life is falling apart. And if they don't necessarily qualify for, insurance, because we have to run that within those parameters. But so one of the things that we're super excited about is we are running an educational program now, where you can sign up, for a month at a time and really get in-depth, I would say, understanding of how you work, how your, psychological processes work. But it's just fun. We have a blast here. We have clients who have been with us for over 2 years, which is almost unheard of in the recovery field. Most people want to finish as fast as they can because recovery isn't really a fun thing for most.
That's not that all get to see at all. It's something you go through.
Yeah. Something you go through so you can get back to your life. And it feels like we've made a community here where people, it's not something that they're eager to finish. They love to stay in the conversation, and they help us. And like you said, we're all kind of now group thinking together, and it's amazing. So that's one of the things that we're super excited about, and we're going to be posting that soon. So
beautiful. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being on, and gang at home, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.